I'm here to introduce today's speaker. So for today's webinar, we will be having Luke Vandermillen, Senior Business Development Manager, giving you a deep dive into our PlanFees benchmarking suite.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction there, Ashley. And thank you all out there for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon. I know we have people all over the country visiting with us today. So again, thank you very much for being with us today. What we'll be taking a look at for today's webinar is doing a deep dive into RPAG's fee benchmarking platform, PlanFees. We really wanted to kind of reset with our members and even some of the folks who haven't joined RPAG yet to show you the different tools and technology that we have to offer advisors like yourself on the fee benchmarking side. Now, remember, at RPAG, our whole business is to help you as advisors grow your retirement book of business, be more efficient, get more revenue. That's what we're here to do. So today we're going to zero in a little bit on our fee benchmarking platform and go through some of those different reports that are available for different situations and when you should use them. Just a heads up, feel free as we go through here to enter questions into the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to answer them during the presentation, but any that we miss throughout, I'll make sure to answer at the end or follow up with you after the session today. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick agenda for you today, just so you can kind of keep track of this throughout. We'll start with a little introduction on PlanFees, talking about building our process when it comes to analyzing fees and benchmarking them, how to position those different reports that you have available to you with your clients and prospects. Really exciting. Towards the end, we will showcase our newest addition to PlanFees called RFP Express, which came out last Monday. So brand new feature that's available out there. And then, like I said, any questions that we miss throughout, we will make sure to answer those at the very end. But let's go ahead and get started here, folks. Talking a little bit about PlanFees. So we created PlanFees here at RPAG to help make the fee benchmarking process simpler for advisors. We here at RPAG have a lot of experience with different tools and technology out there in the industry. And one of the things that we found over and over again was that either the user interface was hard to use with these benchmarking platforms, the data wasn't super reliable, and the reports that were created weren't appropriate to show to clients and prospects. And so with that in mind, we created PlanFees about 5 years ago now for the exact reasons I have up on the screen. We want to help advisors fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities, determining fee reasonableness, taking plans out to bid, etc. We want to produce the most accurate fee benchmarking report in the industry, but also give it to you in less than 5 minutes. So instead of taking a day or two to put these reports together, we want to do this in a matter of minutes for you so that you can save time and dedicate more time to revenue driving activities. So that's the why behind PlanFees. And if you're not familiar with the PlanFees fee benchmarking platform, no worries. We'll take a very detailed look at it here. But just keep in the back of your mind that this is available whether on the web, on a mobile device like your iPad or cell phone. Again, leaning to that on demand, letting you create these reports in a matter of minutes. It's all available no matter what kind of device or platform you're using. And for those of you who are familiar with PlanFees, you probably recognize these two reports that we have up on the screen right now. We have, before we released RFP Express, we had two different PlanFees reports available. The PRISM fee benchmarking analysis, which is a true fee benchmarking report in the sense that it breaks down the fees for a plan and compares them to fees that are paid by plans of a similar size. And we also, a couple years later, introduced our PRISM 365 report, which zeroes in on advisor fees and services and takes a look at the frequency of services that are delivered by the advisor and what the industry average larger benchmark would be. How often should you be meeting with a plan to, do investment due diligence if the plan is $5 million versus $15 million? All those kinds of questions can be answered through the PRISM 365 report. So with setting the table there regarding plan fees, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about what does a prudent benchmarking process look like? What should you be doing as an advisor to benchmark your plan's fees? So when we think about the process here, obviously everything starts with getting fee information from a client or prospect, right? So starting at 12 noon there, we're talking about fee disclosures. Typically, I recommend for advisors to receive the 408B2 fee disclosure because that does the best job, I think, of laying out the plan level fees and the annual fees that the plan is going to be paying. You can also use the 404A5. That does include some participant level fees that sometimes aren't necessarily relevant to a plan level analysis, but either the 408B2 or the 404A5 will work. And then moving clockwise here, our next step is determining reasonableness and what is reasonable for the plan to pay. So some of you might know that the DOL came out and said that, if you're a fiduciary on a retirement plan, part of your fiduciary duty on an annual basis is determine fee reasonableness. Are the fees that this plan is paying reasonable for the plan of this size? And the DOL, being the DOL, didn't say how to determine that reasonableness. They just said you had to do it. And so that was one of the things that encouraged us to create plan fees. So with our plan fee system here, you can determine fee reasonableness by benchmarking the plan annually through our PRISM report, which we'll take a look at momentarily. And then every 3 to 5 years, depending on the plan side, you're going to want to take the plan out to market and do a live bid RFP, going to get live quotes from different record keepers to see not only what they would be charging your current plan, but also what services they can provide. There's a lot more that goes into those live bid RFPs than just taking a look at the fees. And so with that process being very in-depth, really only doing it 3 to 5 years is satisfactory, ERISA best practices, but making sure that you do a quick benchmark for your plans on an annual basis. That's where our Plan Fees PRISM system has been able to help advisors over the last few years. So when we're looking at benchmarking a plan's fees, what are we looking to benchmark? Here at Plan Fees, we break this out into kind of 3 different categories here. We're looking at investment fees, we're looking at the admin fees, and then also the advisory fees. Right. So when we're looking at investment fees, that's always going to be paid by the plan participants. Admin fees, we're looking at record keeper fees, custodial fees, TPA fees as well, which can be paid for by either the plan sponsor or the plan participants. And then lastly, advisory fees, which I'm sure everyone on this call is well familiar with. So those are kind of the 3 different areas that we break the total fees out into. And the reason why we do that is because when you just look at the total fees for a plan, it's not a true look at being able to zero in on, okay, what's the problem area for this plan, right? If you're just looking at a high total plan cost, that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe the record keeper's fees are too high, or the investment fees are out of whack. We're using expensive, A shares or something like that. So we really want to break this down a little bit further and take a look at that in a more granular level, breaking it out into these 3 sections here. Just got a quick question in the Q&A section here. I will be sending this PowerPoint presentation out as follow-up to today's call. So I'll be making sure to send that out to all of the attendees today and make sure you have that in your hands. So we will be sending out the slide deck here. And keep moving on here, right? When we're looking at, not only what are we benchmarking in terms of admin, investment, and advisory fees, but also what are the factors that are going to impact those pricing levers, right? We're looking at how complex is the plan? Is it, a combination of a bunch of different plan types? Is it, does the plan require a high level of educational support or a high level of service? These are all things that we want to keep in mind when we're benchmarking our plan, because as we all know, no two retirement plans are going to be exactly the same. One plan sponsor might require, at least once a quarter, having someone from the record keeper or the advisory firm show up and doing one-on-one meetings or a group meeting. Others might need a high level of compliance testing. Things like that are all things that we need to take into consideration when we're benchmarking a plan through any system that we're using. And then lastly, I like looking at this from the idea of how can we match a plan to the right provider, right? So with plans, we're looking at what are their investment needs? Are they, do we need aggressive funds because it's a young workforce and we need returns chasing funds? So maybe we need, a record keeper that provides us with a high level or open architecture investment capability, service requirements, like I mentioned on the last screen there. And then most importantly, size and complexity. Does the size and complexity of the plan that you're currently working with match the strength of the record keeper provider that the plan is currently with? So all different things that we need to take into consideration when we're benchmarking a plan. Now, getting into more of the tools that you can use to benchmark a plan. This is a spectrum that my boss, Jesse Taylor, put together a few years ago. And I love looking at it because I think it's a very accurate look at kind of the fee benchmarking tool spectrum and what's out there right now. So on our x-axis here, moving from left to right, we have reports that are very time consuming and take a lot of your time to run. On the far right, we have instantaneous, quick reports to run. And then on the y-axis there, we're looking at plans at the top, at reports that are at the top, very compelling for the plan sponsor. And unfortunately, at the bottom, we're looking at reports that don't really move the needle for plan sponsors. So in our quadrant 4 here, we have easy to use reports, but don't really lead us to where we're trying to go, whether that's winning new business or assisting our current clients. That's going to be things like just Googling how much does my 401k cost, or looking at a book that says, hey, here's the fees that a plan should be paying. In quadrant 1, conversely, these do lead to desired results, but they take too much time. So that's going to be very in-depth spreadsheets, putting together a manual process, live bid systems, right? Which still have their place in the industry and in your process. It's just not something you want to do every single year for all of your plans. I mean, if you think about it, most live bid exercises take 3 to 6 weeks to put together on average. And so if you're an advisor that has even a book of 25 plans and are trying to do that every year, you're going to spend your whole year just gathering and receiving quotes and then putting them into a format that you can take back to your plan sponsor, which, even though that's a white glove level of service for your current plans, it's not going to help you continue to expand your advisory practice. And again, not a very efficient way to go about that system. And then towards the middle here, we have okay reports, but again, aren't really going to lead to the change that we're going to want to see, which are going to be, again, very in-depth benchmarkings. And then in our second quadrant up in the top right here, which we call the Holy Grail, is going to be quick and compelling reports that are easy to use, easy to run, and easy to present to your plan sponsor that have accurate and compelling data. And wouldn't you know it, that's PlanFees. And so with our PlanFees PRISM report, the PRISM 365 report, and now with RFP Express, you now have several different tools in your tool belt to match any sort of fee benchmarking scenario that your clients are going to request from you. So let's talk a little bit about each of those different fee benchmarking exercises. So like I mentioned, the PlanFees PRISM benchmarking on the far left, that's going to be something that you can do annually. That takes less than 10 minutes to put together a report. It's a great prospecting resource as well, and we'll dive into that a little bit more momentarily. But the other pieces we have, the advisor fee benchmarking, a lot of our advisors we see using advisor fee benchmarking as an internal exercise to make sure that their service model is consistent with industry standards. So, while we typically don't want to get into too much of a conversation on, hey, why are we charging this for the plan services? If a client ever requests that from you, you do have something that you can pull out of your back pocket and say, hey, we charge you 25 basis points, and here's why: because we're providing you these services, we're meeting with you 4 times a year, etc. And so you have the documentation and also the reasoning behind you to talk about exactly why you're charging what you're charging the plan. And then lastly, we're looking at live bids, right? Looking at every 3 to 5 years, or performing them at onset of a new relationship. Not great to run with prospects in the past because, like I said, it does take a lot of time. And also, you don't want to set up the current advisor and do all this work for them and then just take it to them and say, hey, here's the provider that we should move to. So in the past, our live bid benchmarking hasn't been something that we've really wanted to do for prospects. But I'm here to tell you folks that RFP Express is changing all of that. And we'll get into that momentarily. So, kind of diving into these reports here in the PlanFees suite. The first one, like I mentioned, is your PRISM report, which allows you, with just about 6 data points, to put together a nice fee comparison like the one that we're looking at here. So on the left-hand side there, that purple column, that's the current fees that the plan is paying in those 3 different categories that we were looking at earlier: investments, record-keeping, administration, and advisory fees. And then the other bars that you see going from left to right are actually the range of fees that, according to the PlanFees database, a plan of that size should be paying. So if you look up at the top of that screenshot, you see that the plan that's being benchmarked in that report is $5 million and has 50 participants. And so what we decided to do was compare that to plans between $3.5 and $6.5 million. There's about 2,200 plans of that size that fit into that benchmark that we can select. And then what PlanFees does is it allows us to type in what the current fees are, like you see there in the purple bars, and then it's going to spit out this nice and quick and compelling report that's going to give you, again, a low, average, and high of what plans of that size that you chose to benchmark are going to be paying. So the idea here is that for your $5 million plan sponsor, whether it's a client or a prospect, you can really pique their interest by showing them, hey, you're paying 80 basis points right now for your record keeping charge. And according to our benchmarking study here, the high is right around 78 basis points. Now, for the information of the folks on the call here today, we have the low, average, and high, which are represented of the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile in that universe. So the 78 basis points that you see for the high, that's not the most expensive plan that falls between $3.5 and $6.5 million. That is all. That is just more of the 75th percentile. So I look at it as kind of a mile marker where, hey, if you're around 70 basis points, you're paying a lot for record keeping services. Couple questions here that just came through. Where do you get this plan data? Actually, both of the questions that we were asked were the same ones here. So we get all this plan data at RPAG through RPAG's provider analysis report, which is a report that RPAG has had for a number of years now, where advisors can actually send a request to the current record keeper and have the record keeper directly within the RPAG system update the plan's current pricing. So really, advisors have been using that to take the plan out to bid. And before they do that, they want to make sure they have all the current information available. So what we did to build the PlanFees universe was, any time in the last 3 years that a provider has gone into the RPAG system and updated their fee information through our very comprehensive fee calculator, we've added it to the database. So we have 40,000 plans plus now in that database. And like I mentioned earlier, it is with plans of the last 3 years. Moving here to our next report, the PRISM 365 report. Like I mentioned earlier, Oh, one more question here about the PRISM report. Is there a way to split out TPA costs? Yes, absolutely. So just to take a step back here, this particular plan for this sample is a bundled plan, so no outside TPA being used. Our system does have the capability to benchmark unbundled plans, and the difference that you'd see there is there would be an extra section here for TPA costs. So exactly right. My friend Kathy, said, "Hey, if we put the TPA costs within the record keeping, it's going to make the record keeping fees look really, really high." You're exactly right. And so for this PlanFees PRISM report, if you do have an outside TPA, those fees. All right, moving on here to the PRISM 365 report, where like I said, we're taking a look at advisor fees and services. So one of the most common pieces of feedback that we here at RPAG heard when we originally rolled out that PlanFees PRISM report is, hey, I love to use this PRISM report to benchmark investment fees and record keeping admin fees, but I found that, when I benchmark the advisory fees through there, I find that my fees are on the high side. So with the advisory fees that are in there, we all know, with what's in the industry, you have advisors who maybe are charging a $5 million plan 10 basis points, but are providing them little to no service. And conversely, you might have an advisor that's charging 25 basis points, but they're providing white glove service, showing up every quarter to do meetings or, meeting one-on-one with participants. So with those different scenarios that you're looking at, we wanted to create a report that allows advisors to take kind of a step further into the advisor fee and service conversation and talk not just about what fee the advisor is charging, but what services are being rendered for that fee as well. So with the PRISM 365 report, we're not only looking at the fee that the advisor is charging, but also, hey, how often are you benchmarking the plan? How often are you taking the plan out to bid? Are you doing any sort of fiduciary training? Hey, if you're meeting with the investment committee, how frequently are you doing that? So that the advisors have an extra piece of ammo to take a look at and say, okay, hey, we've got this $5 million plan. How often should we be meeting with them? And also, if you have a client who says, hey, we want to talk about the fee that we're paying you, you have documentation that backs up here and says, hey, this is exactly why we charge you this amount. This is in line with industry standards, etc. Couple questions here as well in the Q&A. So one question is, are the plans that are shown in the PRISM benchmarking universe based on geographical area? No, they are not. They're based off of nationwide plans all over the country, all 50 states. Another good question about the PRISM report. Do you recommend using the default band for assets and participant count, or is there any reason to adjust? It's a really good question. Let me take a step back here. So what that question was referring to is, you see up in the top here of our PRISM benchmark, we have the plan asset band 3.5 to 6.5 million. Our system defaults to a certain plan range when you put in a plan count. So you can see here for $5 million plan, it did 1.5 million below, 1.5 million above. And then you also have the ability to add in another section with the participant band, where you can say, not only do we want to look at plans that are between this asset size, but also plans that have this many participants. So $3.5 to $6.5 million plans that have between 50 and 100 participants. And you as the advisor have the ability to change that and say, hey, instead we're going to look at plans that are between 3 and 7 million or 2 and 10 million. Really, the reason why we gave you that customization for the advisors is so that you can zero this in on exactly what your plan is trying to see. So with with the plan asset band there, if you wanted to change that to include more plans in your universe, or, for instance, maybe, hey, we want to shrink the universe a little bit, but we want plans that are much more consistent with what this plan actually looks like. That's why we give you the customization availabilities there. And then another question here, do these reports take into account average balance or annual contribution flow? So the PRISM report does not include that, but getting a little bit ahead of me here, the RFP Express report does. So that's something that we'll talk about in a second here. So RFP Express. So like I mentioned, RFP Express is our newest report that's available for advisors to utilize through PlanFees. And the idea with RFP Express is we wanted to create an efficient quoting tool for smaller plans. We mentioned a little bit earlier how the doing a live bid benchmarking every 3 to 5 years, typically pretty cumbersome, a lot of information that you're consuming and analyzing there. And so for plans that are much smaller, we're thinking, $10 million and under, we wanted a much more efficient way to gather quotes quickly, because what most record keepers do to price out those plans is they use a pricing grid to say, okay, a plan that has this many assets and this many participants, this is the fee that we're going to charge them. And so what we did here at RPAG and PlanFees is we worked with dozens of those providers to have those pricing grids input into a system, so that what you can do is input that, hey, I have a $5 million plan that has 100 participants. Here's the annual cash flow. And the system will actually pull these instant quotes for you. And I'll take a deeper dive into this momentarily, but just to show you here, all of those quotes that you see on the screenshot on the left are real quotes from real record keepers that you can compare instantly. Those came up not in a day, not in 2 days. They came up instantly. This is something I did yesterday to put this together. So again, I'll dive deeper into the RFP Express process momentarily, but wanted to give you folks a quick look at how we've rounded out this PlanFees benchmarking suite now to say we now have the annual fee benchmarking, we have an advisor fee benchmarking, and we have an instant proposal tool available in this suite. And then lastly, this is for a lot of my longtime RPAG members out there. Y'all might be familiar with the live bid analysis. It used to be called B3 in our system. Now we call it the provider analysis. And this report is still available through RPAG. It's not going anywhere. Really where we see this report being used is for plans that are larger in size. So, kind of north of 15, 20 million, et cetera, or plans that are very, very serious about moving to a different provider. And so this provider analysis allows you for all the different customizations you could ever want for an advisor. So with this live bid analysis report, you can include a custom fund mapping component. You can make sure that the providers who respond to these requests are answering custom questions. Also, we have a 400 data point service highlight questionnaire that you as the advisor can pick and choose from to say, hey, here's the data points that we want to show on the service side as well. So in terms of fiduciary documentation for coming up with, hey, why we're moving from provider A to provider B, the provider analysis is still going to be your most comprehensive and customizable report that we still have. And again, just to reiterate, it's still available within RPAG. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So now that we've kind of set the table here with what PlanFees has to offer, let's talk about an actual example of how you can use these tools with clients and prospects. So I pulled a plan's information from a 5,500 search database, $10 million plan with a little over 100 participants. And really what my goal was to see, okay, hey, where is this plan potentially overpaying for services, and what can we do to fix that? So like I mentioned earlier, for this plan, I was able to get the 408B2 for the plan. And so I was able to take a look at what the investment, record keeping, and advisory fees are. Now, if you take a look here at these different sections, you'll notice the record keeping fee is way up there at 82 basis points. That's what really caught my eye to start. And so if I was going out to actually meet with this prospect, that'd be certainly something I would bring to that initial meeting to show them, hey, based on a plan your size, you're paying, potentially 20 basis points more than you should for your record keeping services. And then we take a look at some of the other fees categories. Well, the investment lineup is only 15 basis points. It's way under the low. Well, I'd be willing to bet that that's probably a lineup that's filled with index funds or has a very passive strategy. And so maybe that's right for that plan, or maybe it's not. And so again, another thing that quickly caught my eye there. And then the advisory fees, just right on the average there. This advisor is charging 25 basis points, which is right around what we see industry average for a plan of this size. So again, this is a really good example of why exactly we break out the fees into these different sections, because if you looked at this from a total plan cost perspective, the total plan cost would be right in line, total basis point number with what you see on average for a $10 million plan in the industry. But when we break this out and look at this a little bit quicker, we notice that the investment fees are very, very, very low and the record keeping fees are very high. And so this allows us as the advisor to identify the problem area and say, okay, record keeping fee is too high. Let's see what we can do about that. And again, I wanted to show you this in more of a dollar amount here, but you look at the total fee amount for this plan is 122 basis points. And on the far right here, we have, okay, the high is about 136 basis points. So if we were only looking at the total plan costs, we would only know that the plan is slightly above average in terms of the fees that it pays. And so again, breaking down these individual components here really gives you and your prospect or client an idea of how can we make this plan better and what can we do here. So now that we've identified that, hey, the record keeping fees are extremely high, what can we do to get that lower? Hey, let's take the plan out to bid. And now you can do it using RFP Express. So again, RFP Express, it's been available since last Monday. And since this plan is $10 million, it's perfect for getting quotes through RFP Express. So what I wanted to show you all here is exactly how to create an RFP Express report. So these are live screenshots that I took from the RFP Express system. So the first thing that it's going to ask us is, okay, hey, what's the total asset value of the plan? What are our fees, which we can just type in these fee columns here down below? And then where is the plan located? To our question that we got earlier as well, it's going to also take into account annual cash flow as well. So we were able to get that for the plan. Just a quick note, because it's a question I've gotten from a lot of different advisors since RFP Express has rolled out. If you're ever running one of these reports for a prospect, just know that if you don't have that contribution or distribution information, it's not going to prevent you from running the report. So you'll still be able to get quotes even if you don't have those annual cash flow numbers available to you. And so I wanted to make that clear because I know sometimes it's hard to get all of those different pieces of information on a prospect, but know that the cash flow won't prevent you from running the report and getting quotes, at least getting an idea of what the market is going to dictate for a plan of this size. And then, like I showed you in a previous screenshot here, these are the quotes, the instant quotes that we received back for this plan. Now, I grayed out the provider names to protect the names of the innocent here. But what you can see here is that the record keeping fees are all mostly under the 82 basis points that this plan is currently paying. And so again, what a great way to pique the interest of a plan sponsor to say, hey, not only have we identified that we have identified that your record keeping fee is too high. We've also identified that, hey, there's record keepers out there in the marketplace that will charge you much less than that. And so again, these quotes pop up instantaneously based on the information that you input on the previous screens there. And you also have the ability through RFP Express as well to request custom quotes as well. So these are, we have about 9 instant quotes here that popped up based on the plan parameters that we input. But we also have the ability to go to about a dozen other providers and say, hey, we'd like you to bid on this plan as well. And typically those providers will be able to get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. So instead of spending 3 to 6 weeks gathering these quotes and putting them together, we've been able to get 9 different quotes instantaneously through the RFP Express system. Looks like we have another question here. When funds have revenue that is retained for to cover record keeping costs, do you suggest showing investment costs net of revenue and grossing up record keeping with revenue amount? Yeah, we do recommend doing that. So the investment expense that we always recommend showing is the net investment expense, which will be net of revenue sharing. And then the record keeping costs, depending on, how that revenue sharing is being applied, whether the record keeper is retaining that revenue sharing or the record keeper is using it to offset those fees, then you can use that for the record keeping fee. Okay. So another question here is basically, hey, sometimes it's hard to find the 408B2. Do we offer a guide for each record keeper that shows the name of their fee disclosure and where on their site to locate it? While we don't have any published guides on our system, we have an RFP team that has extensive experience with locating those fee disclosures. And so again, either the 408B2 or the 404A5 will work. But if you're an RPAG member or you need assistance, feel free to reach out to our RPAG support team. We'll be able to help you with most record keepers on where to find the fee disclosure, etc. And then moving on with the RFP Express report here, we have, I took a screenshot here of the actual report that the RFP Express system is going to kick out for us. And so what we see here, and again, I grayed out the names of the record keeper here, but what you see here is a comparison between those different instant quotes that we solicited through the system. And then on the far left there, you'll also notice that we have the plan fees average, which is essentially just, we took a look at, hey, what's the average fees for a plan of this size? So with this RFP Express report, you're not only getting an industry benchmark there on the far left column, but you're also getting a comparison to the current provider and what quotes you gathered through this system. So again, very easy to digest. And hey, Kathy, to your earlier question, here's the TPA line as well. So we do separate that out for 316 services, et cetera. So that's a look at the RFP Express report. Again, if you haven't taken a look at that yet, I'll be sending a follow-up email that includes this fee summary. And if anyone on this call wants to do a one-on-one demo of the PlanFees fee benchmarking system, I'm more than happy to do that. All my contact information will be included. Kathy, I should make myself clear. You can include the TPA in PRISM. And so the TPA line can be included in PRISM. I'll reach out to you separately, Kathy, and show you what I'm talking about. And then one question here about, hey, what's available on who's available on RFP Express? I will also include a list of the providers that are available here as well. So on the RFP Express system. So in summary, to what we've gone through here, I wanted to mention, we have 3 different reports available through the PlanFees fee benchmarking platform: PRISM, which is your annual fee benchmarking; PRISM 365, which is going to be your advisor fee benchmarking and services; and then RFP Express, which is going to be your instant or quick quote gathering tool. If you don't currently have access to the PlanFees database, you can get access to it for $200 per quarter, which is $800 per year, which gets you access to all three of those different reports. So like I said earlier, if you ever want to take a look at maybe one of your actual clients on PlanFees or want to talk through this in more detail, I'm happy to do that in a one-on-one setting. All right, folks. Well, again, thank you very much for joining me today. And like I mentioned, I'll be sending the slide deck out as well as a recording of today's session. So if you want to pass it along to any of your colleagues, but my contact information is all here on the screen. So feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call if you have any questions about RFP Express. Happy to sit down with you and show you that report or any of the PlanFees tools and technology. But otherwise, folks, have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and hopefully talking to you some real soon again.